Welcome to the No One Ever Told Me podcast, where we talk about the things that no one ever tells you that you really need to know to be successful and to thrive in business and in leadership. This first season has been a huge success. I'm so excited to be on this journey with you. From the beginning, I knew that I wanted to learn from great leaders who were fearless in the way they tackled uncertainty and risk, but I didn't know how much I would enjoy the process or how much these conversations would almost immediately shape the way that I think. To close out season 1, I initially thought about doing a highlight reel from each guest, but I ended up deciding to dive in and give you my one big takeaway from each episode. Each guest was so great and so generous with their time, their willingness not only to help me with the podcast, but also to help each of you listeners with their stories, their leadership nuggets, and their hard-earned wisdom made this first season better than I could have imagined. So let's jump in. Episode 1, Rusty Gaston. Rusty told a great story about going to Vegas that articulated this leadership truth. The things that got you here won't take you where you need to go. You have to be willing to take on more risk if you're going to grow as a leader and to lead at a new level. And as Rusty made the journey from entrepreneur to CEO of Nashville's largest publishing company, it wasn't enough to rely on his leadership gut. He would have to transform his mindset to play ball on this much bigger playing field, and he was ready and up for the challenge. Episode 2 was Jared Bradley. Jared talked about his faith that leads him to humility. When you're in an industry that has all the trappings that could lead you to self-centeredness and self-importance, it's of vital importance to focus on the needs of others, serving your team and focusing on the needs of your clients, and then serving your community helps bring life into proper perspective. He said being a healthy leader is crucial to your long-term impact. Episode 3 was Charlie Neese. The thing I loved from Charlie's episode was his ability to define his values. And that system of values drove his decisions. Those decisions led him to the life that he was meant to live, striking the right balance of prioritizing his family, but allowing the right amount of time to succeed in a brand new industry. Episode 4 was Scott Stevens. Scott was probably the biggest surprise of season 1. I knew Scott was brilliant. We're buddies. And I knew he was finding some significant success. What I didn't know was how perfectly Scott would be able to communicate his ideas in a way that was inspirational and memorable. I had several aha moments in this interview, but one that stuck out to me was when he said, "As long as I'm one step ahead, I can lead people." So many of us think that we'll get to lead one day, someday, maybe when we have it all figured out, or maybe when our resume is perfected, maybe someone will give us a chance to lead, but that's not true. If we can only gain a little more wisdom and a little more insight, we've got what it takes to lead now. Episode 5 was Nathan Dantzler, and since the episode aired, Nathan actually won his second Grammy. But if you listen to this episode, you'll realize that wasn't on his list of things that define success. I think the thing that stuck out to me from this episode was his description of the importance of momentum. Nathan told a fictional story of Person A and Person B. Person A spent 6 months writing, recording, and perfecting one song. Person A spent all of their time trying to make that his masterpiece. Person B instead spent every day writing and recording a new song. And even though the results may not have been as polished, by the time both people got to 6 months and 1 day, Person B was in a better place professionally because he produced more momentum by constantly practicing his craft. Episode 6 was TJ Fletcher. TJ was a blast, and I love hearing her heart for the people that the West Nashville Dream Center serves. But I think my favorite part of her interview was how she said that when you have a clear mission, complicated decisions get easier. TJ told a story when COVID hit in March of 20 and the schools shut down. Even though the team didn't have the resources or the experience to provide a community school environment, their mission demanded that they respond. And even if it was a ready, fire, aim approach, they knew it'd be successful because it served the greater mission of the West Nashville Dream Center. Episode 7 was Jenny Reed. I admired Jenny so much. Her pragmatic approach to leadership and growth, it's simple and effective. The thing that I took with me was the driving question she asked herself in every situation. What's the next best step? I think most of us may have the instinct to ask this question, but what separates Jenny from the pack is that she acts on the answer to that question. As a leader, you have to be able to take hypothetical solutions and bring them down from the clouds and into existence, into the real world. Episode 8 was Nathan Art. Nathan is kind of my spirit animal, except he's louder and more sure of himself than I am. But there's so much more to Nathan's story and leadership that I've come to admire. No question about it. I sat there like a sponge for this interview and soaked up all that I could. Moment after moment, Nathan had practical and inspirational leadership nuggets that moved the needle for me. But if I had to pick one, it's the lesson on failure he's teaching his own children. He told us how he's teaching his son the difference between failure and growth. And the thing that separates those two is perspective. Episode 9 was with Tyler Thayer, and I'm getting to see Tyler work out his learnings almost every week since we're working on a project together. The big idea I took from Tyler's interview was that conversations about company culture can feel esoteric or ethereal, but I'm watching in real time as Tyler names his culture to help define the values he has and teach his team how they can win the right way. Leaning into culture and leading with clarity, it's not an academic exercise. It's not a soft skill. When done right, this will bring more success to your team. Episode 10 was Annie F. Downs. This conversation was great, and Annie is driving a rocket ship at her two organizations. And while I think most people may know her for her fun outlook on life and the content she creates for her friends, what I hope people will see now after this conversation is that Annie is a capital L leader. She's committed to building a world-class staff and organization, and she has what it takes to get there. My big takeaway was her idea of micro fails. Similar to what I learned from Nathan, time brings perspective, and when you look back at what may seem like a catastrophic failure in the moment, with time becomes a learning exercise and part of your story that builds your future. Episode 11 was Vaden Landers. Vaden was my first guest that I didn't know personally before we recorded. It was a great lesson in genuine curiosity to learn about a new leader and their business. Vaden was so gracious to come on the show without knowing me either. The leadership tool that I took away from our conversation came at the very end of our recording. Vaden said, "The shelves are littered with great ideas, but great success comes with great execution." Honestly, a better thesis couldn't have been written for season 1. It's what I want this show to be about. To take an idea, to get it off the ground, to have the courage to get something going. That completely fires me up. And finally, episode 12 with Mike Mixon. I've thought a lot about Mike's interview this last week. Mike was talking about understanding the life cycle of your business, but more importantly, understanding the life cycle of a person. He said, until 28, you're just learning. And from 28 to 48, you can do something, you can build something. But if you're not mentoring the next generation of leaders by 48, you're done. Then he said, a lot happens in that 28 to 48. We're getting married, we're starting families, and it passes like that. And honestly, when he snapped his fingers, my kids, their lives flashed before my eyes when he said that. The leadership tool for me in this moment is knowing that not everything should be sacrificed on the altar of success. Some things matter more than making a pile of money. Choose to make an impact, and that will always lead to more significance than anything you can create, build, or sell. Now, I know there was a ton more wisdom shared in each episode, so if you missed any one of them, make sure you go back and catch up. I'm going to take the next few weeks off to book guests, to plan, and strategically prepare for season 2. And of course, I can't wait to release the next season, but more importantly, I want to make sure the content and conversations that we're having are hitting the mark. I want to know if the No One Ever Told Me podcast is helping guide you to better insights, more courage, or more importantly, better results. If that's you, send me a message on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, and make sure that you join us for season 2 of the No One Ever Told Me podcast.